What happens when a seasoned journalist decides he has had enough of royal deflection and double standards? Of his post-royal career, today we are diving into the explosive confrontation that left viewers stunned. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below letting me know what you think about celebrity interviews that go completely off the rails. Your engagement helps this channel grow, and I read every single comment. The Good Morning America studio buzzed with its usual pre-show energy, cameras positioned perfectly, lighting adjusted to flattering angles. George Stephanopoulos sat across from Prince Harry, who appeared relaxed and confident, clearly expecting another sympathetic interview about his latest charitable endeavor. The promotional materials had suggested a light conversation about mental health advocacy and his upcoming projects. What Harry did not anticipate was that Stephanopoulos had spent weeks preparing for this moment, armed with research, contradictions, and a determination to ask the questions other journalists had avoided. "Your Royal Highness, Stephanopoulos," began, his tone professional but with an edge that immediately caught Harry off guard. "Thank you for joining us this morning. I want to start with something that has been troubling many of our viewers. You have spoken extensively about your desire for privacy, yet you continue to appear in high-profile interviews, documentaries, and now you are writing another book. How do you reconcile these seemingly contradictory positions?" Harry shifted slightly in his chair, his media-trained smile faltering for just a moment. "Well, George, I think there is a difference between sharing my truth and having my privacy invaded. When I speak publicly, it is on my terms about issues that matter to me." "On your terms," Stephanopoulos repeated, leaning forward slightly. "But is it really about the issues, or is it about controlling the narrative? Because from where I sit, it seems like you want privacy when it suits you and publicity when it benefits you financially." The directness of the question visibly stunned Harry. This was not the gentle probing he had grown accustomed to from American media. "Everything I have done has been to shed light on important causes and to tell the truth about what happened to my family." "Your truth," Stephanopoulos emphasized. "You have made some very serious accusations about your family, accusations that have damaged relationships and hurt people who cannot respond publicly. Do you ever consider their side of the story?" Harry's composure began to crack. "My family has had decades to tell their side of the story through the British press. They have never lacked for platforms or sympathetic coverage, have they though?" Stephanopoulos pressed. "Because what I see is a family that has remained largely silent while you have given interview after interview, made documentary after documentary, written book after book, all painting them in an increasingly negative light. Where is their right to privacy? Where is their right to dignity?" The prince's jaw tightened. "They have the entire British establishment protecting them. George, they have the palace machinery, the courtiers, the friendly journalists. I had to speak out because I was being destroyed by lies, and I had no other recourse." "But were they lies?" Stephanopoulos asked pointedly. "Or were they just stories you did not like?" "Because there is a difference between false information and unflattering coverage. And from what I can see, much of what you have called lies were actually just reports about your behavior, your decisions, your actions that you simply did not appreciate seeing in print." Harry leaned back, his royal training warring with his obvious frustration. "George, I think you are oversimplifying a very complex situation. The British media has a long history of targeting members of my family, particularly the women we love. They destroyed my mother's life, and they were trying to destroy my wife's life." "Your mother's situation was tragic." "Absolutely," Stephanopoulos acknowledged. "But your wife's situation was different, was it not? She was not hounded by photographers to the same extent, but it was also the normal level of scrutiny that comes with marrying into the most famous family in the world. Did you really expect her to be treated differently than every other royal bride in history? Because she is American, because she is biracial, because she represented change that certain people could not accept." "That may be true in some cases," Stephanopoulos conceded. "But can you honestly say that all the negative coverage was racially motivated? Can you honestly say that none of it was deserved? Because what I have observed is a pattern where any criticism of your wife gets labeled as racism. Any negative story gets dismissed as lies. At what point do you take responsibility for your own actions and decisions?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Harry's face flushed red, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. "I think this line of questioning is completely inappropriate. George, I came here to discuss my charitable work, and instead you are attacking my family and my wife. I am not attacking anyone, Stephanopoulos replied calmly. I am asking questions that millions of people want answered, questions that other journalists have been too polite or too intimidated to ask. You have made yourself a public figure. You have written books, given interviews, made accusations. Those actions have consequences, and they deserve scrutiny. It's exactly why we had to leave, Harry said, his voice shaking with emotion. This is exactly the kind of hostile treatment that drove us away from Britain. American journalism is different, Stephanopoulos replied. We ask hard questions regardless of someone's title or status. We do not give anyone a free pass just because they are royal or famous or wealthy. And right now, the hard question is this. Do you ever take responsibility for anything that has gone wrong in your life, or is it always someone else's fault? The silence that followed Stephanopoulos' question about personal responsibility was deafening. Camera operators exchanged glances, producers held their breath, and viewers across America watched as Prince Harry struggled to find his footing in what had become the most challenging interview of his life. That is an incredibly loaded question, George, Harry finally responded, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Of course, I take responsibility for my decisions. I took responsibility when I decided to serve my country in Afghanistan. I took responsibility when I decided to put my family's safety first and leave Britain. Every major decision in my life has been about taking responsibility. Stephanopoulos nodded slowly, but his expression remained skeptical. Those are certainly big decisions, but I am talking about the smaller ones, the everyday choices that led to the situation you found yourself in. For instance, you have spoken about feeling trapped in your royal role. But did anyone force you to party in Las Vegas? Did anyone force you to wear that Nazi costume? Did anyone force you to make those comments about your military service that offended so many veterans? Harry's eyes flashed with indignation. Those were mistakes I made when I was young and grieving and struggling with mental health issues. I have apologized for them repeatedly, but they do not define who I am today. Fair enough, Stephanopoulos replied. But what about more recent decisions? What about the timing of your Oprah interview, which aired while your grandfather was dying in the hospital? What about the Netflix documentary that was released just as your family was dealing with your grandmother's death and your father's new role as king? Did you consider the impact of those choices on the people you claim to love? The question hit Harry like a physical blow. His composure cracked further as he leaned forward, his voice becoming defensive. We had contractual obligations, George. These projects were years in the making. We could not just cancel everything because of family dynamics. Contractual obligations, Stephanopoulos repeated, his tone dripping with disbelief. So your contracts with Netflix and book publishers were more important than your family relationships. More important than showing respect during times of grief and transition? That is not what I said, Harry snapped. You are twisting my words, just like the British press always did. I am not twisting anything, Stephanopoulos responded firmly. I am using your own words. You just said you had contractual obligations that prevented you from considering your family's feelings. That sounds like you prioritized financial commitments over personal relationships. Is that an unfair characterization? Harry ran his hands through his hair, a gesture that betrayed his growing desperation. George, you do not understand the complexities of our situation. We had to secure our financial future. We had no support from the palace, no income from the royal family. We had to take care of ourselves and our children. No support, Stephanopoulos challenged. Your father was providing financial support even after you stepped back from royal duties. That has been documented, and your grandmother left you millions in her will. So, when you say no support, what exactly do you mean? Financial support came with strings attached, Harry replied hotly. Control, manipulation, demands that we stay silent about what happened to us. We could not live under those conditions. So, you traded one form of control for another, Stephanopoulos observed. Instead of palace oversight, you now have Netflix executives, book publishers, and streaming platforms telling you what to do. How is that different? How is that better? The question clearly rattled Harry, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. At least now we have a choice in what we say and do. At least now we can tell our truth without censorship. Your truth again, Stephanopoulos noted. But what happens when your truth conflicts with documented facts? What happens when your recollections do not match official records or other people's memories? For example, you claimed in your book that your brother physically attacked you, but you also admitted you had been drinking and were emotionally distraught. How can viewers trust your version of events when your own state of mind was compromised? Harry's face turned red with fury. Are you calling me a liar, George? Are you suggesting I made up the attack? I am suggesting that memory is fallible, especially under stress, Stephanopoulos replied calmly. I am suggesting that your perspective might be colored by your emotional state and your grievances against your family. I am suggesting that presenting your subjective experience as objective truth is problematic and potentially harmful. Harmful, Harry laughed bitterly. What is harmful is the system that protected my family's reputation while destroying mine. What is harmful is the press that turned a blind eye to their mistakes while magnifying every single one of mine. What is harmful is the racism and sexism that my wife faced while everyone pretended it was not happening. Let us talk about that, Stephanopoulos said, seizing on the opening. You have made very serious allegations about racism within your family and the institution. But when pressed for specifics, you have been vague. You have talked about concerns about your son's skin color, but you have never named names or provided concrete examples. Why should people believe such serious accusations without evidence? Harry's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the chair arms. I have been protecting my family by not naming names, but that does not mean the conversations did not happen. That does not mean the racism was not real, but it also does not mean it was racism, Stephanopoulos countered. Could it not have been innocent curiosity? Could it not have been the same kind of speculation that happens in any family when a new baby is coming, without context, without names, without specifics? How can anyone evaluate whether these were genuinely racist comments or simply awkward family conversations? Because I lived it, Harry replied through gritted teeth. Because I saw my wife's pain. Because I watched her struggle with the isolation and the hostility, and that pain is real and valid, Stephanopoulos acknowledged. But pain does not automatically equal racism. Difficulty adjusting to royal life does not automatically equal discrimination. Your wife faced challenges, absolutely. Your brother's wife, so did your father's wife. So did every woman who married into that family. Why is her experience uniquely about race rather than the normal pressures of royal life? The question landed like a knockout punch. Harry stared at Stephanopoulos in stunned silence, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to formulate a response. The confident prince who had walked into the studio was gone, replaced by a man who looked cornered and desperate. Harry's stunned silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but the microphones picked up every word. You clearly do not understand what we went through, George. You cannot possibly comprehend the level of harassment and discrimination we faced. Stephanopoulos leaned back slightly, his expression remaining professionally neutral despite the explosive nature of the moment. Help me understand then. Give me one concrete example of institutional racism that you personally witnessed. One specific incident with names, dates, and circumstances that clearly demonstrates the discrimination you are alleging. Harry's eyes darted around the studio as if looking for an escape route. I have already explained that I am protecting certain family members by not revealing specific details. But the pattern was clear. The treatment was different. The coverage was biased. Those are very general terms, Your Royal Highness, but you have made very specific accusations. You have damaged reputations, destroyed relationships, and caused international incidents based on these allegations. Surely you owe the public more than vague references to patterns. I owe the public nothing, Harry snapped, his royal composure finally cracking completely. I have given enough of my life to public service. I have sacrificed enough for the institution. I will not be interrogated like a criminal for protecting my wife and children. No one is treating you like a criminal, Stephanopoulos responded evenly, but you are a public figure who has made public accusations. You have profited from those accusations through book deals and media contracts. The public has a right to scrutinize claims that serious. Harry stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This interview is over. I will not sit here and be ambushed by someone who clearly has an agenda against me and my family. Please sit down, Your Royal Highness, Stephanopoulos said calmly. We still have 10 minutes left in our scheduled time, and millions of viewers tuned in to hear your perspective. Running away now will only reinforce the impression that you cannot defend your positions when challenged. The words hit Harry like a slap. He remained standing for a moment, visibly wrestling with his emotions, before slowly sinking back into his chair. Fine, but I want it on record that this is not the interview I was promised. What interview were you promised? Stephanopoulos asked. One where no one would ask difficult questions. One where you could repeat your talking points without challenge. Because that is not journalism. That is public relations. Harry's jaw clenched. I was told this would be a discussion about mental health advocacy and my charitable work. Instead, you have spent the entire time attacking me personally. I have asked you to defend statements you made publicly, Stephanopoulos corrected. Statements that have had real consequences for real people. If you cannot defend those statements, perhaps you should not have made them in the first place. Everything I have said is true, Harry insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it Stephanopoulos challenged? Because your story keeps changing. In your first interviews, you said you and your wife were trapped and had no choice but to leave. Then you said you were cut off financially and had to fend for yourselves. Now we know your father was supporting you and your grandmother left you millions. Which version is true? Harry's face flushed red again. All of those things can be true simultaneously. The situation was complex and evolved over time. Or, your narrative evolved to suit your needs, Stephanopoulos suggested. First, you were victims who had no choice. Then, you were abandoned and penniless. Now, you are independent entrepreneurs, building your own brand. Each version served your purposes at the time, but they cannot all be accurate. You are putting words in my mouth, Harry protested weakly. I am using your own words from your own interviews and your own book, Stephanopoulos replied. If they contradict each other, that is not my fault. That is your inconsistency. Harry slumped in his chair, looking defeated. George, why are you doing this? What do you hope to accomplish by tearing me down on live television? For the first time in the interview, Stephanopoulos' expression softened slightly. I am not trying to tear you down, Your Royal Highness. I am trying to get to the truth. You have positioned yourself as a truth-teller, a whistleblower, a victim of injustice. If they are true, they will withstand examination. If they are not, the public deserves to know. And if this destroys what is left of my relationship with my family, Harry asked quietly. That relationship was damaged long before this interview, Stephanopoulos replied. Your book, your documentaries, your previous interviews already did that damage. Today, we are simply examining whether that damage was justified. Harry stared at his hands, silent for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were glassy with unshed tears. I just wanted to protect my wife and children. I wanted to give them a better life than I had. I wanted to break the cycle. Those are admirable goals, Stephanopoulos acknowledged. But the methods you chose, the accusations you made, the bridges you burned, were they really necessary to achieve those goals? Could you not have protected your family without destroying theirs? The question hung in the air as Harry struggled. To compose himself, I do not know, he whispered finally. I honestly do not know anymore. Stephanopoulos nodded slowly. That may be the most honest thing you have said all morning, Your Royal Highness. And perhaps it is where healing can begin, with that kind of honest self-reflection, rather than constant blame and victimization. The interview concluded moments later, leaving both men emotionally drained and viewers across the world stunned. By what they had witnessed, Harry walked off the set without the usual pleasantries, his royal facade completely shattered by 30 minutes of relentless questioning that had exposed the contradictions and inconsistencies in his carefully crafted narrative. What did you think of this incredible confrontation? Have you ever seen an interview go this completely off the rails? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more jaw-dropping celebrity moments that you will not see anywhere else. Let me know. Should journalists always ask the tough questions regardless of someone's title or status? Or was Stephanopoulos too harsh in his approach?